We are constantly, I mean constantly, bombarded by these stories of the dramatic breakthrough. The sudden high-intensity pivot that just changes everything overnight. We're always hunting for the hack, the shortcut, the big viral announcement that's supposed to guarantee success. And I think we often mistake that intensity for actual progress. But what if the greatest, most lasting, and frankly, the most unstoppable results in your life don't come from drama at all? What if they come from something quiet, steady, and so mathematically inevitable that it moves completely beyond opinion and just becomes a fact? Today, we are diving deep into a fascinating philosophy of achievement that focuses on exactly that, cultivating progress that is simply, well, undeniable. And the source material we have today is phenomenal. It functions less like a theoretical self-help book and more like a clear step-by-step manual. It's about shifting your mindset from relying on, fleeting motivation to harnessing predictable, almost mathematical progress.
And that's really the core of our mission here. This deep dive is all about extracting the hard, practical truths and, maybe more importantly, the deeply counterintuitive rules that separate what the authors called the builders from the spectators. I mean, you have to look at the culture right now. We obsess over instant feedback, rapid performance metrics, external validation.
Oh, absolutely. The likes, the funding round, the big announcements about goals.
Exactly. It's all performance. And this material, it serves as a necessary and frankly a kind of painful corrective to that cultural addiction. It's a detailed manual for cultivating internal integrity, for elevating the quiet, consistent process over the intense, public, but ultimately unsustainable performance. We're looking for the structural foundations, the bedrock that make genuine success predictable, not some random accident.
Okay, let's unpack this. We had to address the elephant in the room and really kill the common fantasy right at the start. When people aim for something undeniable, they usually visualize perfect execution. They imagine, a flawless run, a performance so slick that no critic could possibly find a flaw. Or maybe they think they need a massive visible crowd cheering them onto the finish line. But the sources are crystal clear that vision is a fantasy. Undeniable is not flawlessness. It is not never failing. And it certainly does not require an audience. So if we're stripping away all those external visible components, what exactly are we building?
We're building evidence. That's the simple, powerful answer. The central concept is that your progress has to become mathematically obvious.
Yeah.
And this is a crucial foundational distinction from just being, talented or lucky. When a sequence of actions repeats reliably and for long enough, the outcomes fundamentally stop being subjective opinions that can be debated. They harden into objective, measurable facts.
That's where the mathematical part comes in.
Yeah.
We spend so much energy arguing about the subjective stuff.
Exactly. I mean, think about everything that fuels modern discourse and argument. Is that person truly motivated? Do they have enough raw talent? Is their ambition genuine? Is their strategy the absolute best one? People can debate those attributes forever.
Right, and they do.
But they cannot argue against compound behavior. It is the ultimate truth teller in the long run.
That shifts the focus entirely away from who you are.
Yeah.
Your inherent traits, your genius, your background, and squarely onto what you do. It democratizes achievement in a way. It implies that if you simply repeat the right action long enough, the result is guaranteed, almost regardless of where you started. You're leveraging a universal law, not a personal trait.
Precisely. If we look at this through, say, a financial analogy, think of intensity as a lottery ticket. It's a chance for a huge sudden spike, but with a near certain long-term failure rate. Compound behavior, on the other hand, is just reliable. Daily savings combined with interest. You don't get rich overnight, but the outcome is it's inevitable. The money shows up because the system, the mechanism of accumulation, never stopped running.
It just keeps ticking away in the background.
And the sources illustrate this concept with the most boring examples possible, and I think that's intentional. If someone commits to studying a complex subject for just 20 minutes every single day, consistently, for 3 years, skill just appears.
It's not magic.
No, it's accumulation. If someone commits to training for strength, even when they're tired, the physical change eventually surfaces. If someone is building a business quietly, focusing on one small system refinement every day, the results eventually surface. There's no drama, no grand announcement, and crucially, no need for permission from the outside world.
It sounds like the most boring, predictable superpower, which, according to this philosophy, is exactly what makes it so unstoppable. But I have to challenge this a little bit. Isn't intensity necessary at certain points? I mean, doesn't the world require high-impact, short-term bursts of effort to seize opportunities?
That's a great question, and the sources don't dismiss intensity entirely. Not at all. Intensity is excellent for solving acute problems, for handling emergencies, or for that final push to meet a deadline.
Right, for a sprint.
But intensity is fundamentally unsustainable as a foundation. If you build your entire life on intense bursts, you burn out, and your progress line looks like a volatile stock market chart. Huge peaks, followed by these catastrophic troughs. The undeniable life, however, is built by inevitability, not intensity. It's about structural certainty. It's creating a system where the successful outcome is the only possible end result because the daily inputs, those reliable small actions, never stopped for a long enough time. We're basically trading volatility for certainty.
So if we boil this concept down for the listener, we are telling them to trade the dream of being exceptional one time for the mandate of being reliable for a very, very long time.
That is the mandate. Undeniable is built by reliability. Exceptional moments are fleeting. Reliable behavior is foundational. The fundamental difference between a temporary success and an undeniable life is the integrity of the long-term process. The debate ends when the evidence is presented, and the evidence is nothing more than the cold, accumulated product of that reliable, compound behavior over time.
Okay, so if it's truly just about reliability and showing up, then we have to ask the critical question. Why do so many smart, motivated people still crash and burn? They start strong, they have all the intensity in the world, but they consistently quit at the 6-month mark. The sources suggest the answer lies in these deeply ingrained, often invisible psychological traps we've been conditioned to accept.
And this section addresses what the sources call the most dangerous invisible trap. It's invisible because it feels completely natural to us. It's the underlying belief that our effort requires encouragement to continue. We are social creatures, and we're conditioned from a very young age, from the school system where we got grades, through corporate structures with performance reviews, and now, exponentially, through social media, to wait for external signals.
We're taught to outsource our self-worth. It's like we need a constant report card on our own lives.
Exactly. Grades told us if we were good enough students. A promotion tells us if we are a valuable employee. Likes, shares, and comments tell us if our creative output matters and if we're even allowed to take up space. This conditioning fundamentally rewires our internal motivation circuits to be completely reliant on others.
So if I'm working on a deep, quiet project, say I'm learning a difficult language or writing a complex piece of code, and I don't get that immediate positive reinforcement, what happens?
Well, the practical consequence is devastating. When that external feedback disappears, the effort collapses. It collapses because the internal reward system is just sitting there waiting for the external signal. And the sources make this profound, practical truth statement that you really have to internalize. Most people don't quit because things are hard. Hard work often validates itself. They quit because things are quiet.
Ooh, that's powerful. They stop because they mistake silence for failure.
They are waiting for validation, for praise, for just some acknowledgement of their effort. And when no one notices, they internalize that silence as proof that the effort was wasted or the idea was bad. They've outsourced their motivation to the audience, and when the audience is absent, the engine stalls.
That resonates so powerfully with the modern experience. We launch a blog or start a new skill, and if the engagement isn't immediate, we assume the whole project was flawed from the start.
And that's precisely why the sources state that the decisive shift is a commitment to internal metrics. If you need external validation to continue, you will never last long enough to achieve the compounding effect required to win. The undeniable life starts the moment you make the conscious, profound decision. I will work even if no one cares, notices, or cheers. This decision alone is the fence line separating builders, who are operating on an internal, self-sufficient metric, from spectators who are waiting for an external invitation to begin or to continue.
That crucial decision then leads us directly into the power of silence. For many listeners, not talking about your goals might seem totally counterintuitive. I mean, we're taught to network, to seek accountability buddies, to announce our intentions to the world. Some might even assume silence equals fear, or maybe a lack of ambition. But the sources define silence as focus without leakage. What does that mean?
It's basically an energy management strategy rooted in cognitive science. The psychological danger of announcement is one of the most counterintuitive rules we pull from this material. When you loudly announce a challenging goal, for example, telling your entire social circle that you're going to write a book, your brain releases a dose of satisfaction prematurely.
Oh, yeah.
You get the positive social feedback, the congrats, that's awesome, and the mental reward associated with achievement, even though you haven't actually changed anything substantive yet. The brain registers, social approval received, progress happened, and that little hit of satisfaction is so dangerous because it lowers the necessary sustained drive to do the hard, quiet, actual work. It gives you the reward before the effort.
So We essentially feel like we've already partially completed the mission just by talking about it. We've burned off some of the energy needed for the long haul in a purely social transaction.
Precisely, which means the practical rule here is very clear. Talk less, significantly less about what you plan to do, and instead document privately what you actually did. This is all about establishing an internal ledger of accomplishment.
How does that look practically for someone listening? I mean, we're not saying stop telling your partner what you're doing, but how do you make that transition from seeking external cheers to internal proof?
You use silent, non-social trackers. This could be a physical notebook where you just tally your actions, a simple spreadsheet, or a quiet digital journal. The goal of this silence is twofold. First, it preserves the drive by withholding that premature reward we just discussed. And second, and this is equally critical, silence removes social pressure.
The pressure of expectation.
Right. Social pressure, even the benign pressure of people politely checking in, hey, how's that book coming along, introduces performance anxiety. You start working to manage the expectations of others instead of working to complete the task for yourself. And what is the one thing that anxiety destroys more efficiently than anything else?
Consistency.
Consistency. Anxiety introduces variance, self-consciousness, and doubt into the daily execution. Growth thrives best in isolation from noise because noise introduces all these unnecessary variables and emotional drag into the simple equation of compound behavior.
So silent work isn't secretive work just for the sake of being mysterious. It's about creating a protected, neutral laboratory for your own growth. A space where the only metric that matters is the private tracking of your actions against your own standards. It just eliminates all that social friction and drag. Okay, so if external approval is poison and silence is the necessary cure for protecting our process, the next question becomes mechanical. How do we structure the daily decision-making required to ensure reliability? How do we build this internal evidence, this self-trust ledger, every single day, particularly when we feel tired or overwhelmed?
Right. So we move from the psychological protection of Section 2 into the operational mechanism of Section 3. The sources begin this section by driving home a very simple truth. Consistency is not a mystical personality trait that you are either born with or not. It's not about genetics. It's not talent. It's not luck. It is simply decision-making at a micro level.
That reframing is essential.
It is, because it moves consistency from being something you have to something you do. Every single day, regardless of external circumstances, presents the builder with the same simple question. Will I show up, even imperfectly, and execute my minimum action? The primary reason most people fail is that they wait for ideal conditions. They wait for the perfect mood, the perfect weather, the perfect uninterrupted 3-hour block of time. The undeniable life doesn't wait for permission or perfection.
That waiting game is the killer, isn't it? It gives the emotional resistant part of your brain all the power. If we wait for the feeling of motivation to strike, we'll be waiting forever. So we need a system that functions even when we are at our absolute worst. And that's where the concept of the non-negotiable minimum comes in, which the sources call the worst day standard.
This is the operational masterpiece of the whole approach. You define something so small, so trivial, that skipping it feels ridiculous. The goal is to set the bar ridiculously low. If your grand long-term goal is writing a complex nonfiction book, your worst day minimum might be 50 words. Just 2 sentences.
Just to keep the engine running.
Exactly. If your goal is athletic fitness, your minimum might be 5 minutes of stretching on the living room rug. If your goal is professional development, it might be reading 1 single page of a relevant industry report. It must be something that takes less time or effort than the mental energy required to argue with yourself about whether you should do it. It bypasses the emotional gatekeeper entirely. You cannot tell yourself convincingly that you don't have time for 1 single page.
And crucially, that minimum protects the single most important rule of this entire process. Never miss twice. It's all about building a chain.
Absolutely. Momentum comes not from that one huge 12-hour burst of work you had last month. It comes from unbroken chains of consistent small action. If you miss Monday because life just intervened, you must show up on Tuesday, even if it's only for your ridiculous minimum. Consistency protects streaks, not moods.
That's a great line. Consistency protects streaks, not moods.
Your mood is irrelevant. Your self-pity is irrelevant. The unbroken chain is the structural foundation of mathematical progress. If you miss twice, you break the identity of being a reliable person, and that psychological break is far more damaging than the missed task itself.
I think we need to spend a little more time on how the sources reframe discipline, because for so many people, discipline sounds like restriction, sacrifice, and pain. But here, discipline is reframed entirely, moving away from restriction and toward integrity.
This changes the game because it anchors the entire process in identity. Discipline is integrity because it refers specifically to the promises you keep to yourself. Every single promise you keep strengthens your identity. It builds that mental file, proving irrefutably that you are a reliable, follow-through person. Conversely, every single promise you break, and this is key, even small ones, weakens your identity. We often think breaking a promise to do the dishes or to send a quick email is trivial. But the sources argue this is catastrophic to your confidence.
Why does breaking a small, seemingly insignificant promise erode our ability to tackle a massive goal?
Because the brain doesn't compartmentalize. If you routinely tell yourself, I'll do X later, and then you don't do X, you teach your subconscious that your word is negotiable. So when you then try to tackle the huge, scary goal like starting a business or learning a difficult skill, your internal voice already has a massive file of evidence showing you cannot be trusted to follow through. The doubt is earned through thousands of tiny betrayals of self-respect.
So confidence isn't some inherent quality or some magical external grant. It's a side effect of behavior.
It is entirely earned. The sources map this out explicitly. Confidence is a side effect of self-trust, and self-trust is a side effect of kept commitments. This is the confidence cycle.
The cycle feeds itself.
It does. If you want more confidence, stop waiting for inspiration and start keeping tiny, boring promises to yourself. The actionable steps derived from this are simple yet profound. Start small, finish what you start, and crucially, close all loops. Do the dishes tonight if you said you would. Send that email immediately. That minor completed task acts as a micro win that strengthens your internal belief system. The undeniable life is built by people who honor their own word more than they honor their immediate comfort or their desire to procrastinate. It is self-respect in constant, quiet action.
Okay, so that covers the daily mechanics. But what about the bigger picture? How does this all fit into a life?
Now that we have the daily mechanics of consistency and discipline established, we need to address the overall structure of life. Which brings us to the source's critique of balance.
Balance sounds like the pinnacle of a healthy life, right? We all want work-life balance, but the sources suggest balance often leads to diluted effort, spreading energy so thin that nothing truly compounds effectively.
That's the danger. The desire for perfect balance encourages us to keep everything equally weighted: career, family, health, social life, hobbies. But if you are trying to achieve undeniable, mathematically obvious results in a specific area, say launching a critical project, it is simply impossible to give everything else equal weight. You end up achieving mediocre results across the board.
Instead of one great result.
Exactly. Alignment, by contrast, means focusing your available intensity where it matters right now, and accepting that other areas might temporarily have less of your energy without letting them collapse entirely. You are aligning resources with your current top goal, which creates intense forward momentum.
That takes radical honesty, though. How does the listener know where their intensity is truly directed? My narrative about myself might be completely different from my actual behavior.
You have to run a practical audit, and it has to be data-driven. Your stated priorities are irrelevant. If you tell everyone your health is your top priority, but you have no time allocated for cooking healthy meals or exercise, your statement is a lie.
Harsh, but true.
The calendar reveals the truth. Your screen time data reveals your true values. Your consistent habits reveal your operating priorities. We are dealing with cold, hard data, not the story we tell ourselves.
So the first necessary step is total, non-judgmental honesty. Track one full week, every hour spent, every dollar spent, every minute on social media. Collect the data without beating yourself up.
Exactly. Don't beat yourself up over the results. Just treat it as a scientist would. Observe. If your audit reveals you spent 25 hours scrolling news and only 2 hours on your main goal, the system is fundamentally misaligned, regardless of how motivated you felt while scrolling. The next step is just to adjust your behavior to match your intended direction. The goal of the undeniable life is not to do more things perfectly, but to ensure that the few things that truly matter are being done consistently. If you align your action with your direction, the compound effect begins immediately. If you are constantly trying to perfectly balance 5 different priorities, you get zero compounding effect in any single one of them. Alignment guarantees focus.
Okay. Alignment gives you the focus needed for the long haul. But even with perfect alignment and a strict worst day standard, the road to mathematical progress is not a thrilling mountain climb. It's long, it's flat, and it's internally challenging. We absolutely need to address the two most powerful internal forces that derail even the most meticulously consistent builder: boredom and doubt.
Yes, this section is critical. This is where the real work happens.
Let's face it, we are talking about building things quietly, repetitively, day after day. Chapter 8 acknowledges the absolute monotony inherent in greatness. It's the same basic exercises in the gym, the same skills repeated, the same quiet routines. You have to acknowledge the dullness.
This is the attrition point. This is where we lose most high performers who confuse efficacy with excitement. People quit not because the work suddenly became harder or more complex, but because boredom arrives before mastery. They hit this plateau of monotony and they mistake that lack of immediate emotional novelty for a lack of material progress.
They think this can't be it. This feels too easy and too dull to be the path to greatness.
Precisely. They're waiting for the thrill of the chase to return. But the sources brilliantly reframe this monotony. Boredom is not a sign of failure. It is a signal that you are doing the right thing long enough for deep structural growth to happen.
So it's a good sign.
It means you've established the pattern, you've moved past the novelty stage, and the work is successfully transitioning into structural accumulation. Think of it like a geological process. Mountain ranges aren't built overnight. They are the accumulation of eons of pressure and movement, all quiet, unseen, and utterly boring to an outside observer. But the result is undeniable.
So instead of dreading the boredom, we should recognize it as a badge of honor. It's proof that we've achieved the consistency required to enter the mastery phase.
Excellence is not exciting. It is simply effective and repeatable. The people who build the undeniable life are those who have mastered the ability to stay on task when the novelty fades. They prioritize results over the feeling of excitement.
Which requires a different sense of time.
And that leads directly to the next point. Sustaining this boring excellence requires a massive temporal shift in mindset. This is the core of the section. Longevity versus the cultural obsession with speed. Our society prizes speed-fast feedback, rapid results, instant gratification. But longevity is the only mechanism that creates actual, enduring transformation.
The psychological trap here is related to unrealistic timelines, right? We see someone's finished product and assume it took 6 months when in reality it took 6 years.
Exactly. The trap is that most people dramatically underestimate how long true, undeniable progress takes. They expect results in months, a new body in 3 months, a successful business in 6 months, and when the results don't materialize on their invented schedule, they panic. They jump to a new system, a new diet, a new goal entirely. They restart the clock just before the compound effect was about to kick in.
So the practical rule to counter this panic must be about setting a radically extended horizon.
It is. The practical rule is to commit in years, not months. You have to enter the endeavor with the expectation of slow feedback and the absolute faith-based trust that accumulation is happening beneath the surface, unseen. The undeniable life compounds quietly, and you need to be willing to sit in that quiet for a long, long time before the results surface and become visible. If you commit to a 3-year window, missing a single day or even a single week has a much smaller psychological impact than if you were only committed for 3 months.
It puts it in perspective.
Right. By committing to years, you instantly reduce the pressure for instant results, and, ironically, by reducing the pressure, you increase the likelihood of consistency, which speeds up the actual progress.
Okay, but even for the most aligned, consistent, and patient builder, doubt inevitably shows up. The sources assure us of this. It will appear not because we are doing something wrong, but because growth is inherently uncomfortable. You're stretching your capabilities, and the brain sends up a red flag. Doubt often appears precisely before breakthroughs.
And doubt is a mental state. It's an internal narrative. We cannot argue with it directly. That just feeds it and makes it stronger. If you try to debate your doubts, am I good enough? Is this worth it? You just get stuck in rumination. Therefore, the practical response to doubt must be purely physical, purely action-based. You don't try to think your way out of doubt, you act your way out.
What are the actionable steps to trigger that physical response?
The sources suggest 2 powerful actions that work together. Reduce the task size and increase the action frequency. If you are doubting your ability to launch a huge product, you reduce the task size to setting up one single meeting or writing one single email. Then you increase the frequency of that smaller action. The goal is simple. Motion dissolves mental resistance.
I like that. Motion dissolves mental resistance.
If you are paralyzed by the idea of writing a whole chapter, you reduce the task to writing one sentence. By forcing yourself to complete that one sentence, you generate a tiny piece of motion. That tiny completed action dismantles the mental block of, I can't do this. It gives you proof that you can, in fact, move forward.
Motion over meditation, essentially. It bypasses the analysis paralysis. The moment the doubt arrives, you immediately shrink the scope and force movement.
That's the mechanism. The undeniable life demands that you keep moving, even without certainty. You trust the process of accumulation, even when your internal narrative is screaming that you're wasting your time, that you're an imposter, or that the process is just boring. The consistency of movement is the only effective antidote to the paralyzing effect of internal uncertainty.
So we've covered the mindset, the mechanics, and the internal battles. What happens when this process actually starts to work, when results start to appear?
We've established the mechanism, the protection, and the mindset for the long haul. As the quiet process inevitably transitions toward visible results, we have to address the social cost of deep focus. The sources discuss the natural side effect of intense alignment: loneliness.
This is a consequence many people fail to anticipate, right? They think success brings connection, but here the sources suggest it brings distance.
It does. When you fully commit to the undeniable life, your personal rhythm changes drastically. You might wake up earlier, you say no to social events that distract from your minimum commitment, your priorities shift, and your conversations evolve to reflect your deeper focus. And naturally, this creates distance from those who maintain the old, distracted rhythm. This is not about having an ego or being arrogant. It is simply the natural consequence of alignment. You can't focus fiercely on what matters and also maintain perfect social equilibrium.
And most people, when they feel that distance or loneliness, they instinctively shrink their aspirations or dilute their discipline just to maintain social acceptance. They sacrifice their long-term growth for short-term comfort and belonging.
That is the trade-off. The sources provide a practical boundary here. You do not need to announce every change, seek approval for your new discipline, or ask permission to evolve. You use solitude and quiet focus as a sharpening tool. The undeniable life will often feel quiet because clarity lives in quiet spaces, away from the demanding noise of constant socializing.
And then recognition shows up.
Then comes the moment the shift hits. Recognition arrives. This can be subtle, more attention, more questions about your methods, maybe a new level of respect from your peers. This, however, is the danger moment.
Why is recognition, the thing that seems like the ultimate goal of all this effort, considered the danger moment?
Because the impulse is nearly irresistible. You want to start performing for approval. The moment you start changing your routine, working harder or louder, or increasing your pace because you are being watched, you reintroduce the external validation trap.
You're back to square one.
Exactly. You stop working for your own internal ledger and you start working to manage the expectations of the audience. The mandate here is ironclad. When the spotlight hits, change nothing. Stay consistent, stay quiet in your process, stay focused. The undeniable life does not change pace when it is watched. It maintains its rhythm. You keep working for internal self-respect, not external applause.
This leads perfectly to the inevitable disconnect between effort and outcome that others see. The results are visible, the achievement is loud, unavoidable, and it surfaces for everyone to see. But the effort that created those results was born entirely in silence and maintained in monotony.
This is a truth the builder must internalize early on. People look at the undeniable result, the successful business, the high level of skill, the physical transformation, and they immediately assume there must have been a shortcut, or a moment of genius, or a stroke of luck that they missed. They fail to account for the quiet, accumulated effort of years. They only see the peak, never the tedious climb.
For the builder, the mandate then becomes protection. Protect the quiet process.
Always. Never rush exposure. Protect your process fiercely because the process itself is your shield against internal doubt and external interference. Once you rely on the visibility of your results, you risk making the process visible, and a visible process invites the noise we already established is detrimental to consistency. You have to honor the unseen work that went into the results.
And ultimately, as the sources remind us, this entire journey was never about the audience anyway. It was never about revenge or proving critics wrong or getting rich quickly.
It was always fundamentally about self-respect. If you are doing this work primarily to impress others, you are still bound by the external validation trap, which makes your entire structure fragile. The final reflection question is the ultimate test of true alignment. Would you continue this exact work if absolutely no one ever noticed?
If your honest answer is yes, you've achieved the clarity of alignment necessary for the undeniable life.
So we've moved from dismantling the fantasy of intensity through the mechanics of discipline to embracing the boredom of consistency. What is the ultimate takeaway? What is the final undeniable truth that stitches this entire philosophy together? The undeniable life is built quietly. It is repeated daily, regardless of feeling or mood, and it must be protected fiercely from external noise and internal anxiety. There is zero room for drama, zero room for shortcuts, and zero room for excuses in this process. When you successfully combine profound alignment with relentless micro-level discipline, the result is evidence. And evidence, mathematical, quantifiable evidence built over years of consistent, silent action, ends all debate. When your life becomes evidence, you no longer need to explain yourself. The results speak for themselves, and that is the highest form of validation there is.
That is a profound roadmap, taking us from a philosophical concept to the absolute nitty-gritty mechanics of daily self-trust. We started by dismantling the reliance on external metrics, the likes and the cheers, and ended by establishing an internal ledger of self-respect that guarantees predictable, almost geometric results. It's a complete system.
To synthesize the entirety of this deep dive, the undeniable life is built quietly, repeated daily, and protected fiercely. The radical absence of drama, the elimination of shortcuts, and the fierce protection of your internal boundaries are the foundations upon which truly inevitable progress stands. It's a manual for predictable victory.
That leaves us with one powerful, provocative question for you, the listener, to mull over this week. When the world is actively shouting for our attention, demanding performance for the audience, and incentivizing noise, how often do we mistake that noise for genuine underlying progress? The truest measure of commitment, and therefore the greatest predictor of success, is what we commit to when no one, not even an algorithm, is watching. Thank you for joining us for this crucial deep dive into the mathematics of progress and the profound power of silent work. This AI Whisters, signing off.